In more than 770 reviews, I have reviewed, well, quite a lot, but there are still times when we can find something that I haven't reviewed yet. Now, I have done Scale 200 before, but this is the very first time that I'm reviewing a Gemini Jets 200 model. Now, I have also in the past reviewed Gemini Jets 400 models. None of them could really convince me. So how will Gemini Jets do with Scale 200? Let's find out. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at a Boeing 737-900 of KLM. At the front of the box we have a lovely rendition of the aircraft, and we can see this is the flaps down version, so there is also a flaps up version. We can also see here that we have this lovely little logo here celebrating the 100th year anniversary of the airline. Now, when it comes to the back side of the box, we have this writing on the box, which is a bit difficult to see here. Now, in real life, it does look better, I promise you, but this golden writing here is quite reflective and not that easy to capture on camera. But what we can see is that, well, Gemini Jets is not shying away from a lot of bold statements about their models. They do this in Scale 400 and also in Scale 200. And I have nothing against, well, being confident in your products, but you really do also need to deliver on it, which I find Gemini Jets quite often doesn't, but we will see if they can do it in this case. But there's another thing I would like to highlight on this box, and that's actually this little metallic button, which I'm not a huge fan of. Now, this is of course to be able to open and close the box. However, there are much better systems out there using, for example, magnets, so you don't get this little button bulging out from the box, because when I then store my box next to other boxes, this will just, rub up against other boxes and damaging them, and that's not nice. Now, before we take a look at the aircraft model itself, we can mention that this aircraft model does come with a stand, which is quite usual with Scale 200 models. It's also not unusual that you actually need to assemble them yourself. However, I find this stand that Gemini Jets has gone for is just flimsical, and that doesn't look nice. There's the fact that when you have to pull in these metal pins, you can't really determine if you have stuck them deep enough in, so it's not filling me with confidence when using the stand with the model. And that's not a nice feeling when you have a nice and expensive model on a stand which you don't really trust. Now, here she is, the Boeing 737-900 in the current standard livery of KLM, with one little addition of a sticker celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the airline. But apart from that, it is just the box standard livery of the airline. Now, this Gemini Jets 200 model was released in 2021, and as mentioned, in two versions, with the flaps down and with the flaps up version, both of them also with removable landing gear, something we will take a look at later in this video. But we'll do things one step at a time, starting off with the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the iconic KLM branding. On the fuselage, we then find the Dutch flag, the flag of the European Union, the full registration code of the aircraft, the company slogan, the Flying Dutchman. We have the aircraft type specification, and some quite lovely printed detailing in, for example, the cabin door. Now, at the tail of the aircraft, we do find some combined physical and printed detailing in form of the APU exhaust, but if you look underneath here, we can also see, for example, the tail strike sensor or a few more hatches, so overall looking really lovely. But what about the front of the aircraft? Well, here across the fuselage we can find the KLM Royal Dutch Airlines branding, and just behind that the 100-year anniversary sticker, something that has by now been removed from, I think, pretty much all aircraft of the KLM fleet, but I think it is a really lovely logo and I'm happy to have it on this aircraft model. It's a bit of memorabilia. But we of course have plenty more detailing here on the aircraft in form of hatches, markings, sensors. We have the name of the aircraft, we have the Sky Team logos, of which the airline is a full member, and of course also the Air France KLM Group logo. The cockpit section itself also has some lovely markings, also the petitubes, for example, and then of course the cockpit windows with the metallic edges, the window wipers. Above that we find the last two letters of the registration code, and also the nose comb or radome has a bit of printed detailing on it. Quite lovely so far. The engine nacelles have been kept in all white, just as the belly of the aircraft, where we do find quite a few details here. For example, we have the silver leading edge, the safety markings, or the KLM branding, but also a few more small markings, hatches and stuff like that can be seen on the engine nacelles. So really lovely in the printed detailing, but also the physical detailing of these engines I think is really lovely, especially here from the front. Very nice. You can see through the engines and the engine fan blades. Now, on the fuselage, just above the wings, we find the emergency exits have been printed on, and that leads us straight to the wings, which we most definitely should also take a closer look at. Starting over the top side, where we have the different flaps, slats, and spoilers carved out very nicely. We have the markings as to where to walk on the wing, both in form of lines and in writing. We have the markings for the emergency exits printed on as well, of course. The underside of the wings offers more nice physical detailing and the full registration code of the aircraft. Now, the highlight on the wings, I guess, has to be the fact that we have the wings in the flaps down configuration. And I mean, come on, that's just a look you can, dive into and just enjoy the entire day. I could look at this for hours. It looks really fantastic, in my opinion. Not much worse off are the winglets. They also look really great with the KLM branding. Yeah, that's a nice look in my opinion, and really nicely executed by Gemini Jets 200. And just to round off the wings, we should also mention that we do of course also have the landing lights as a printed detail. Now, where I think Gemini Jets has also made a great effort is with the landing gear that is made entirely out of metal, except of course for the wheels themselves or the tires, they are made out of plastic. Now, we have lovely detailing, like for example wheel caps, but we do also find some printed details around the front landing gear. So yeah, that's not too bad. And as mentioned, the landing gear can be removed, so we do get a few spare parts here. Now, one thing I have to mention, this is a fairly common system. You find it, for example, also on JC Wings models, and it's working with magnets. Now, one thing I don't quite like here is with the main landing gear is they can be a bit tough to be removed, and it's hard to, not pull them out at the wheels themselves, and because they are rolling, I'm just afraid to break it. But when you get them out, you can then place these other parts in, so you can display your aircraft in basically a gear up position if you like that. Again, you have all these parts that you can add. It's a fairly simple and ingenious system. And of course, when you then want to change it back to displaying the aircraft model with extended landing gear, you can just remove these plates again. As mentioned, the landing gear or wheels are rolling, so you can roll around with the aircraft model, although it is a collectible item, not a toy, so I don't really get the feature, and I would always be afraid of breaking it. Another thing that doesn't fill me with confidence is this hole in the fuselage where you add the stand, because it is just so undefined. When you add the stand, you just don't really feel if you have put it in all the way, if it's secure. So this surely can and is being done better by other manufacturers. So let's switch to something that is much nicer to talk about, and that is the detailing of the aircraft model. On the belly of the aircraft, we have a plethora of, both printed and physical detailing in, for example, antennas, which look really lovely and are really solid. I mean, I've been handling the aircraft throughout this review, and none of them have moved or budged in any way, shape, or form. Also on the top of the fuselage, we find a combination of printed detailing and physical detailing, again with antennas, for example, or the beacon light. That's something we also saw on the belly of the aircraft, and I really like this beacon light. This is a feature that, of course, is coming from JC Wings, not surprisingly, because JC Wings actually makes the Scale 200 models for Gemini Jets, at least according to my sources. And then last but not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Boeing 737-900 in the flaps down configuration in the current standard livery of KLM, with the addition of the 100-year anniversary sticker from Gemini Jets in scale 1 to 200. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Now, let me say this from the get-go. I think Gemini Jets 200 does a much better job than Gemini Jets in 400 scale. I mean, okay, my sample size is not that big because I have only reviewed this Scale 200 model from Gemini Jets so far, and only a handful of Gemini Jets Scale 400 models. But yeah, for me, this is still a huge difference in quality. And the bold words on the box, well, yeah, they kind of live up to that, I have to admit. So yeah, well done, Gemini Jets. But I have also mentioned that, well, I mean, it's maybe not that surprising because the Scale 200 and actually also Scale 400 range of Gemini Jets is being produced by JC Wings, and that explains many similarities. I mean, with this aircraft model, we have the flaps down features, we have the, for example, physical beacons, we have the removable landing gear with the exact same system as we see with JC Wings. Even the mount for the stand in the fuselage is pretty much the same as we would see with JC Wings, just the stand looks different, and for me that's a huge difference because, as I say, I really do not have any confidence in the stand. I don't like it. I think it is a big miss in my books that Gemini Jets went with this kind of stand. There are much better options out there, and this is just not the right one for this aircraft model. But to be fair, I have to mention that I have now had this aircraft model on its stand for about a week here in my home office, and it's standing there, doesn't mind anything. I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like falling down at any moment, but I can't shake the feeling that for me the stand is too flimsical, and the way I have to mount it into the aircraft, it doesn't fill me with confidence. But you see, I'm focusing quite a bit on the stand because that is for me the major letdown of this model, because the model itself in my books doesn't really have any letdowns. The physical detailing of this aircraft model is really solid in my opinion. There's nothing here that is bent wrong or is falling off, or it's just a solid Scale 200 die-cast model. Also, the print on this aircraft model I'm really happy with. The quality of the print is great. We don't really have smudges, the edges are clean, and we have a lot of nice detailing on this aircraft model, so it's a really good effort in my opinion. But if I had to try to come up with something that I don't really like about this aircraft model, well, then it is probably the rolling wheel feature. I mean, yeah, I have said it before in other reviews, I don't really get this feature with aircraft models because, I mean, they are die-cast collectible models, they're not toys, so why would you want to have these kind of moving parts that, honestly speaking, if you really use it, they will break at some point. It doesn't matter how good the quality of the model is, it will break at some point. And for example, the front landing gear can also be moved around and actually spun around, and so if you were to roll around with the aircraft model, the front wheel is just uncontrollable. So again, I just don't really get that feature, and I would actually prefer if diecast manufacturers overall would abandon this kind of feature. But okay, for some people it's the right thing and the model does have it. So again, I guess that's a good thing. So in conclusion, where Gemini Jets so far in Scale 400 hasn't been able to convince me of their products, I think in Scale 200, at least with this aircraft model, they have done a really solid job, and I'm happy to say that this aircraft model is part of my collection. But what is your opinion on Gemini Jets in Scale 400 and 200? Let me know in the comments section below. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, then feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.